I got to ask you while everyone's not here. What does Choshen Mishpat mean?
Choshen is the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol, and Mishpat means justice. And the reason
the breastplate of justice.
Yeah, and the reason is because this was the symbol of justice was the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol. When they needed judgment, they would sometimes consult with the Kohen Gadol, whose the stones of his breastplate would illuminate to tell them the proper judgment.
So what is the connection of all these laws? I get the feeling it's how you interact with other people. And how does that relate to the breastplate?
Well, it's the Kohen Gadol also represents the seat of justice in the leadership of the Jewish people. So a lot of the laws of Choshen Mishpat have to do with coming before the judges, and asking.
Gotcha.
Get started in just a sec.
Rabbi?
Yes, hi.
Hi, good morning. I came up with a new idea for covering the shofar. Instead of using the masks, I take a microfiber cloth. You can get at Canadian Tires or anywhere, and it holds. I think it's better than the masks even. And I just put it over the shofar loosely.
Yeah.
And it doesn't block. And it doesn't block too much. And you can seal it all the way around if you hold it. Just hold it around like that. See what I mean? And it works much better than the mask.
Okay.
So for anybody who has an objection to blowing because of the mask, I think this is the way to go with it. Because it seals it up all the way around. The mask doesn't sit on it very well. Anyway.
Patent it before it's too late.
So can you show it to me one more time? Put it over. I was looking at something else.
So here's the shofar, and here's the cloth. You drape it over top, so it covers all the way around. So seal all the way around. So here, I'm bring it closer.
Yeah, I see it.
And it covers, and you can loosen it up a bit just by going like this, and you can make a sound out of it.
Okay.
I gotta try. I tried it yesterday with 30 blows. I'm gonna try it today with 100. Worked fine. It's a little bit, tiny bit restricting, but the sound's almost the same. And that's all I have to say.
Okay. So maybe when we have that Zoom call that you had requested, you can mention that,
Be happy to do it. I also mentioned it to Richie. Sent him an email about it. I'll give him a call, Mirza Shem, today.
All right. So before we go on, I just wanted to share with you the Gemara that I said that we would discuss. It's Gemara in Ksuvis. I had forgotten. I thought it was Bava Metzia, but it was Ksuvis. There's a lot of discussion in that Gemara about taking care of the poor. The Gemara discusses a lot of different scenarios of not embarrassing a poor person and also giving a poor person what he's accustomed to having. Let's see. Let me just see where I should start from. Like, for example, the Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan. Does everyone see the Gemara that does you see it on your screen? Ein lo ve'eino rotza lihispanes. If a poor person has no money, but he doesn't want to take any money from the community chest, he's got too much pride. Nostin lo l'shum halva'a, then you should tell him, we're going to give you a loan. It's from the Gemach, you have to pay it back. B'chozin v'nostin lo l'shum matana, divrei Rebbe Meir. And then afterwards, you can forgive the loan. In other words, that's one way to help a person save face. V'chachamim omrim, nostin lo l'shum matana, v'chozin v'nostin lo l'shum halva'a. So the Chachamim say just the opposite. You should give it to him for this in the name of a gift, and then give it to him in the name of a loan. So basically, try to find. So the Gemara says, what does that mean? L'shum matana halo shaka. But he's not going to take a gift. Amar Rava liftoach lo l'shum matana. What does that mean? So let's see. So what does Rashi say? So Rashi explains. Well, the way the Rambam explains it, that what you're supposed to do, like Rambam says, you can offer it to him as a gift. You offer it to him as a gift, then you can offer it to him as a gift, and if he refuses, then you can give it to him as a loan. So the bottom line is, the Gemara is concerned about not shaming a person. So here's the story that we story is with Mar Ukva. Mar Ukva hava anya b'shivavuse. Mar Ukva there was a poor person in his neighborhood. The hava ragil kol yoma deshadi le'arba'a zuzi b'tzinora dedasha. And every day, Mar Ukva would place 4 zuz behind the door hinge, so that when the ani would open the door, he would just go around the door and he would find the money. Yom echad omar, ezel echse man kavod bihahi tivusa. One day, the poor person decided to himself, he says, let me go and see who is doing this kindness for me. I want to say thank you. Hahu yoma naga leila Mar Ukva lebe medrasha. So asyu dvisu bahadei. One day, Mar Ukva got delayed in the base medrash, and apparently he would go right after leaving the base medrash. He would go and put the money behind the guy's door, and I guess he would meet his wife afterwards. But apparently, for whatever the timing was, his wife met him at the base medrash, and he said, "Listen, I'm running late. We'll go where we need to go, but I first need to put this money behind the door." So his wife is with him on this particular day. Kaven de chazyuha de kamatzli leiladasha nafik basrai. So the ani then sees that they're coming towards his door. He starts running after them. Rahut mikame. So Mar Zutra says, "Oh, he spotted us. Let's run." So they ran away from him because they didn't want to be identified. Aili lahahu atuna dahava grufa nura. And they ran to hide, and they ran into a furnace that had its coals shoveled out, so it was a cleaned out furnace, but there may have been some residual heat at the bottom of the furnace. Hava kamikailin karye de Mar Ukva. And as a result, Mar Ukva's feet were getting singed. Amrale devisu, shkol karach oseva karoi. So his wife said to him, "Don't worry, my feet are fine. Put your feet on top of my feet and you won't get singed anymore." So the heat did not affect her. That happens to me sometimes. My wife has a higher tolerance for heat than I do. So I try to take the pot out of the oven, and she says, "No, you better let me do that." This is almost like, it reminds me of that kind of situation. So Cholash Daite. So Mar Ukva became very upset. Like, why is my wife superior to me? Like, why is God making a miracle for her that she can handle this and I can't handle it? So Amrale, so she said to him, let me explain to you. Ana shachichna begavei devesa umekarva ahanyasa. So she said to him, the reason why I can tolerate the heat is because, in other words, she attributed it to heavenly grace, that she said, because I'm in the house all the time, I give the aniyim direct benefit by giving them food. And like Rashi explains, va'aniyim motzein osi lefichach zechusi gadol. In other words, the aniyim easily find me. In other words, when it comes to you, they have to run around and make an appointment and come back. Well, sometimes they find you, sometimes they don't find you. I'm always home, she says, and so therefore it's easier for them to find me. So that's one reason why I can provide more benefits to the poor. And also, I provide them immediate gratification because I give them bread and meat and salt. But you just give them cash. And they have to go to the market, they have to buy stuff. So therefore, I am more connected to the aniyim, and therefore my zuchus is greater, and that's why I'm able to tolerate the heat. So, umay kulehai. So the Gemara then asks the question, why was this whole thing necessary? Like, why did Mar Zutra and his wife have to run away and hide in the furnace? The Amar Mar Zutra bar Tuvia Amar Rav, Va'amri la Amar Rav Huna bar Bizna Amar Rav Shimon Chasida, Va'amri la Amar Rav Yochanan Mishum Rav Shimon ben Yochai. Series of Chachamim said as follows: Noach lo la'adam sheyimsar atzma letoch kivshan ha'esh, va'al yalbin pnei chavero berabim. It is better for a person to throw himself into a fiery furnace and not embarrass his friend publicly. Mi nolan, where do we know this from? Mi Tamar. We know this from Tamar Dichsiv, he mutzeis. That it says that she was being taken out to be burned at the stake. And as we know from the story in the Chumash, she was prepared to put her to be put to death. And like Rashi says, Afal pisha ba'asa lisaref, even though she was about to be burned, lo gilasa hadavar ela im ken yigalehu, v'im lo yigale nisrefes. She was prepared. Look, if Yehuda is willing to confess to his being the father, then fine, that's up to him. But if he doesn't want to be embarrassed, I'm not going to be the one to embarrass him. Better that they put me to death than for me to embarrass another human being. Okay. So, and then the Gemara relates other stories about Mar Zutra and how he did acts of chesed, but that's enough for us for today. If you recall, the Rav Shulchan Aruch had quoted this story as an indication that even when you're in the process of doing a mitzvah, you have to be careful not to be guilty of onoas devarim or of embarrassing anyone, making them feel bad. Which means even if, when you're giving tzedakah, if you do it in a way which is going to embarrass the person or make him feel like he's done something terrible by inconveniencing you, then you've done a terrible thing.
Rabbi, just going back to Tamar there. So what she did there was something at a very high level, but I thought my understanding was there's three things that you would give your life up for. Avodah Zarah or Znus or I think the third one there. But I was going to say that so this is not something that'll come upon us though to give our life up for, right?
Correct. The Gemara is not telling you that a person is obligated to give up their life. The Gemara is telling you that it is a virtue, like you see from Mar Zutra. In other words, the Gemara clearly acknowledges that Mar Zutra was going above and beyond the letter of the law by running away from the ani. You do your best to cover your tracks so that the ani doesn't know who his benefactor is. They were going above and beyond the letter of the law, and they learned that from Tamar, who also went above and beyond the letter of the law. Clearly, you're absolutely right, Ron. Clearly, a Jew has an obligation to preserve his life at any cost, even if it means that I have to embarrass someone in order to preserve my life. However, if you want to be really virtuous, you should do whatever you can, even if it means risking your life, in order to avoid embarrassing someone. That's really what the lesson is. Okay, so
Rabbi,
yeah,
isn't there somewhere that says embarrassing somebody is like killing them?
yes.
So
Right.
would it not be similar in a sense if you wanted to take the last example that actually giving up your life, you're not supposed to kill somebody. If somebody turns to you and says, kill this person or I kill you, you can't do it. So
Correct.
could there be some sort of connection?
There could be, but I don't think that in practicality that we actually that this is a halacha that you're like. Look, when it comes to Yehareg Val Yavor, the obligation to be killed and not to violate the commandment, it, like Ron said, it only applies to the three actual cardinal sins of adultery, idolatry, and murder. But this is akin to murder, but it's not real murder. So you can't say that it's worth it, that the Torah would obligate me to give up my life to avoid embarrassing someone. What you're seeing is that this is the highest standard. It's a moral lesson in how careful we have to be to avoid it. But in a real practical way, Mar Zutra was not going to let himself be run over by a train if that was the only way for him to avoid embarrassing the ani. He was prepared to hide in a furnace, right? But he wasn't going to jump into a furnace that was filled with fire, right? He hid in a furnace where the worst that would happen to him was that he would singe the soles of his feet. Okay. So let's take a look at the Imrei Yaakov. Let's see. Okay. Let's go to the Imrei Yaakov. New share. Okay, there we go. So the Imrei Yaakov now is commenting on the halacha of embarrassing someone. It says, Shem Ra, you're not allowed to use a negative nickname to call someone with. So he writes, Lav Dafka Elakol Kinoi Sheyachol Ligram Lo Busha V'Tzar. It's not specifically a bad name like fatty or dummy or whatever you want to call it, or but even if it's just a nickname that could cause him embarrassment, like even if you call him Little John, right, which is there's nothing inherently derogatory about that. Wasn't that in Gunsmoke? Was that the name of the show? Where there was a Little John, but even though that doesn't cause him embarrassment, there's nothing inherently derogatory about it. But if you know that it causes him embarrassment, then you're not allowed to call him that. Even let's say call him Casanova, right, because of his exploits when he was a young man with the women, right? So right now he's a rabbi. So why would you want to call him that? Or let's say they called him Slick or whatever, because he was a real chevraman when he was a young man. Now he's a Rosh Hashiva. So you're going to embarrass him today because he went by a nickname which reveals that he was more flamboyant perhaps or popular when he was younger, and he doesn't want to be known by that anymore. So anything that would cause him embarrassment is going to be prohibited.
So, Rabbi, may I ask a question? And this is specific case I won't mention any names, but there was an individual who everyone called by this nickname. And how would you know that it troubles him? Except I heard him once say, "I'd really like to be called by my own name." And then I proceeded to always call him by his first name, but everyone continued to call him by this nickname. I mean, how does this get disseminated that he just doesn't like it, or should you just avoid it completely?
Well, sometimes there's no way to know unless the person tells you. Obviously, if everyone feels that he enjoys the name, and he only reveals it at some point later on, so then you learn to make the adjustment. I'll give you another example. Rabbi Taub grew up here in Toronto, right? So when people who knew him when he was a young boy, his name was Barry when he was a young boy. But to go over to him in shul on Shabbos morning and say, "Barry, how are you?" Well, first of all, his name is Baruch now, and it's Rabbi Taub in front of his congregants. So, that would also perhaps cause him embarrassment or discomfort. It's not appropriate. Okay. So kavanaso levaisho aser, right? So if the intention is to embarrass him, it's aser. Avolim ein kavanaso levaisho, eino over alo sonu halohoil v'halo eino mispayish shaharehu ragil b'kaf. So we had seen this in the Imrei Yaakov yesterday. If the intention is not to embarrass him, so then you don't violate the mitzvah of lo tonu. If he's used to as long as both parties, both the person who uses the nickname and the person who receives the nickname, if neither have malicious, if the person using the nickname doesn't have any negative intent by using it, and the other person doesn't feel bad when he's called that name, so then there's nothing wrong. Aval im b'metzias halam ispayish bazeh, vaday da'aser afim eno miskavin levaisha. But if the person does feel embarrassed, even if your intention is not to embarrass him, then it's going to be aser. Berabim, you can't, you're not allowed to embarrass someone, and if you do embarrass someone publicly, you forfeit your share in the world to come. And here the Gemara says, the Imrei Yaakov says, ve'ein chiluk ben katan legadol. There is no distinction here between a child and an adult. And this is a really important issue because this happens in school all the time. Where an educator will single out a young man and dress him down verbally for not having his homework or not having the correct answer for the question, and it could traumatize the child. But the issue of embarrassing someone publicly is such an occupational hazard when you're a teacher, because you have to be so careful in what you say to a student so that you don't embarrass him in front of his peers in the classroom. Okay, and if you do so, you forfeit your share in the world to come. So he says, but you only forfeit your world to come if you didn't do tshuva. You didn't rectify the error. If a person never did tshuva, he forfeits his world to come, even if he suffered in life, because suffering does not alleviate this particular kind of sin. This particular kind, sometimes suffering does atone or expiate sin. But for this kind of sin, where it's you forfeit your world to come because it's tantamount to murder, so then you don't. This kind of sin is not expiated through suffering. Okay. Now, so. All right. Well, let's just continue in the Imrei Yaakov, and then we'll look at the Biurim later on. In Miskavin Leganoso, if your intention is to, and remember he added the words in Miskavin He says, "Ba'afilu shelo b'fanav asur mishum lashon hara imiskabin leganosu levazoso." And even if the person is not present, you have to be very careful not to say anything derogatory about that person, even using a negative nickname because of lashon hara. And it's asur because it provided that your intention is to degrade him and to disgrace him. Okay, but so here's an important caveat, because if he added those extra words. Aval im kavanaso lishmor es chaver shelo yilmad b'ma'asav shita demutter u'mitzvah nami ika. So he says, here's one exception to the rule. Let's say I'm speaking to my son and I'm saying something disparaging about a friend of his because I want my son to not do what this other boy has done. Okay, I'm telling him, listen, I'm telling this to you not because of lashon hara. You and I both know that your friend Johnny went ahead and was, got himself in trouble, or was using a certain kind of drug that I don't want you ever to do, or was driving in an altered mental state, something like that. And you're telling your son this because you tell your son, I don't want you to ever be the one who I don't want to ever get a call in the middle of the night that you're stuck in jail like your friend Johnny. Okay? For me to do that is permissible in halacha. Pashat b'muter u'mitzvah nami ika. That is clearly permissible, and it's even a mitzvah to do that if you feel it'll help the person you're speaking to not emulate or imitate what the other person has done. V'lachein roa adam ve'echad mida meguna, kegon gaiva o kas o shar midos ros. And therefore we go even further and we say, let's say you see a person possessing a certain kind of negative trait, negative character. Let's say the person is arrogant, or he's prone to anger, or other kinds of negative qualities. Or he just wastes his time all day and skips out of school or skips out of the base medrash when he should be learning. It's sometimes appropriate, not even just permissible, but it's appropriate to tell this to your son or to a student and tell them, you know what? I don't want you to become like Johnny. Johnny, unfortunately, has left the Torah. He's not taking his studies seriously, or whatever the situation may be. Or he's just, this person has very poor character. It's going to get him in trouble one day. And I don't want you to become like that person. He's a schwitzer. You know what a schwitzer is, right? A guy who's, they call a person a schwitzer when he's got, he tries to flaunt. What's that?
A show
off. He tries to flaunt his wears the fancy clothes and tells everyone what he's doing and wears the Rolex watch and wants people to invest with him. And so I can tell my son, I pull him over to the side and said, Johnny's bad news. I want you to stay away from him. Or what other similar kinds of situations like that, you are allowed to tell someone that you can influence not to be involved with that person. Ki ha'ikar mashi hizhira haTorah b'lashon hara afilu al emes hu im kavanaso levazos es chavero v'lismoach liklona. He says, when does the Torah prohibit lashon hara? Lashon hara, by definition, is when your objective is primarily to degrade to disgrace that other person, and to gain benefit from that person's disgrace. Ulam im ein bo to'eles hanal. He says, so that's your primary objective. Here, your primary objective is to protect your son or another person that you can influence. Say, listen, stay away from that guy. He's bad news. Okay, but ulam im ein bo to'eles hanal. But if that's not your objective, and there's no positive objective to be gained by speaking about Johnny that way, af she'eno midaber mitoch hasina v'lo niskavin leganoso rak omer derech schok v'kalos rosh, he says, even if you bear the guy no malice, and your objective is not to disgrace him, but you're just saying it as a joke, right? And just schmoozing, right? Afal pichen kevin shal pi emes divrei genaihu asr min haTorah. But it's still nonetheless forbidden by the Torah, since the words contain words of disparagement. So that's by definition lashon hara. And as we mentioned, there's a whole sefer that was written by the Chafetz Chaim specifically on the issue of what lashon hara is. So to say it to a person's face, which is the subject of our sif, is usher because of onas devar. To say it not to his face is going to be usher because of lashon hara, unless this one specific example brought by the Imrei Yaakov, when you're doing it for a toeles, is what it's called, where you're doing it for a positive benefit to help protect another person. So, okay. All right. So what I'll do is, I think I'll save the next parts. We'll do the Likutim, we'll do some of the Biur, and we'll save that all in Mirz Hashem for tomorrow. Okay?
Shkoyach.
All right. Have a good day, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Hey, gentlemen, be well.
You too.
Bye.